I welcome you all. Thank you for coming. Thank you for interest and time. This talk was organized by Young Scholars Series, and we will be talking about death and the grief process for like 20 minutes, and then we'll be having a session for question and ask for 10 minutes. And yeah, the first one is the speaker is Sema Yılmaz, and then I will be presenting my research. I'm Mera Aydil Sezen. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Dear guests, good evening and warm greetings to you all. My name is Dr. Sema Yılmaz, and I am an associate professor of the psychology of religion at Sivas Cumhuriyet University in Turkey. My academic background combines existential psychology, spiritual coping, and faith development across the human lifespan, and completed a postdoctoral research fellowship at Boston University School of Theology, where I focused on the intersection of that, anxiety, psychotherapy, and religious meaning making. I'm currently in the UK to present my recent research at the International Association for Psychology of Religion Congress in Birmingham University, and I am delighted to take this opportunity to visit London and share some of my work in this interdisciplinary setting. And thank you again for you. It's a privilege to reflect with you on a topic that speaks to both our scholarly interest and our shared human journey. This evening I would like to reflect on a silent yet ever-present theme that accompanies us throughout our existential journey, that anxiety. In this presentation, I will explore how awareness of that, beginning at birth and deepening in old age, evolves through the developmental stages of life. I will also share reflections on how one's image of God, patterns of belief, and religious practice interact with this anxiety, supported by research findings. My aim is to show that death is not only an end, but also a companion on the path of personal meaning-making and inner transformation. And first part of life, it's childhood. First, encounters with that childhood. Childhood, the most vulnerable stage of life. It is also the time when the roots of that anxiety begin to take hold. From a psychological perspective, the infant experiences the first separation anxiety shortly after birth. Around 8 months of age, when object permanence is established, the child can mentally represent the absent person, which gives rise to early fears of loss and disappearance. And cognitive development progress, children's understanding of that gradually shifts from magical thinking to more concentrated and abstract reasoning. Based on Jean Piaget's developmental stage, children between the age of 7 to 11 enter the concentrated operational stage, where they begin to grasp the idea of irreversibility and causality, yet often still imagine that as reversible, personified, or caused by external agents. By age 10 to 12, during the formal operational stage, children develop more complex mental structures, allowing them to understand that as universal, inevitable, and permanent. For a child, that is often perceived as sleep, a journey, or a temporary absence. What causes the most fear is not their own death, but the thought of losing attachment figures like parents, even if they cannot express this fear directly. We know that children who experiences loss or grief needs safety and clear explanations more than ever. A child's understanding of that depends not only on age but also on gender, socio-economic structure, background, and especially the quality of communication with parents. Children who are able to talk about that with their mother and father are more likely to comprehend its meaning and an earlier age. Importantly, these messages conveyed during this stage shape the foundation for the child's understanding of life, death, and eternity. If we explain in age-appropriate language that death is irreversible but love can continue, the child is able to integrate both loss and self-awareness into their developing sense of meaning. In this way, secure attachment and clear, emotionally sensitive communication can transform early death anxiety into a building block for resilience and spiritual growth. And second part of our life is adolescence. Adolescence facing that identity, justice, and rebellion. Adolescence is a stage where the most profound life questions arise, centered around the search for identity. Although physical development are nearly complete, the emotional and cognitive transformation are intense. During this time, the individual realizes that death is universal and inevitable. This realization both provokes deep thought and emotional turbulence. This realization both provokes deep thought and emotional turbulence. Death is no longer just about others. It now threatens the adolescent's own existence. Typically, adolescents show two opposing reactions. On one hand, rebellion, a sense of injustice, and fear of loss. On the other, displays of strength of defiance of that. Risky behaviors, the glorification of living fast, or consuming violent media content can be unconscious ways of coping with death anxiety. All this stage, death is not only a biological reality, but a philosophical and theological problem. Questions such as, who do good people die young? Or does life have meaning? Or why would Allah allow this? Lead to adolescents to reconstruct their religious worldview. Therefore, what young people need most is a safe space, both personally and socially, where they can express themselves and explore these questions freely. Positive role models, secure relationships, and meaningful life goals can help turn this challenging time into a period of growth. Likewise, through prayer, contemplation, and spiritual practice, an adolescent can form a deeper, more hopeful relationship with that. And the other stage of our life is adulthood. Yes. Adulthood, repressed awareness and the pursuit of meaning. Adulthood is both the most productive and most demanding stage of life. Individuals often focus on work, family, raising children, and the social responsibilities. Yet behind this productivity, the reality of death continues to accompany them quietly. Often, that is pushed into the unconscious this time, and people confront themselves by thinking, it's not my time yet. it is not my time yet. But life has its way of reminding us of our mortality, everywhere. The death of a friend, the aging of our parents, a sudden illnesses, or even a news headline can bring death anxiety to the surface. To cope with this anxiety, adults often turn to meaning making. Building a family, raising children, achieving career success, or contributing to society all offer a sense of permanence. Leaving a legacy through charity, useful knowledge, or the prayers of child gives life meaning and helps transform to fear of death. As the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, when a person dies, all their deeds come to end except for three. Ongoing charity, we say that sadaqah jariyah, and beneficial knowledge, and a righteous child who prays for them. Narrated by Abu Huraira, this hadith beautifully encapsulates the core spiritual strategies that many adults use consciously or unconsciously to transcend the finality of death and maintain a sense of spiritual continuity. During this phase, one's relationship with Allah also deepens. Death is no longer merely a trait. It may be seen as a return or a spiritual companion. A loving image of God offers strong psychological support, believing that death leads to not to nothingness, but to a realm of mercy and forgiveness, allows individuals to make peace with their mortality. In this sense, facing death in adulthood becomes most healthy when it is accompanied by a lifestyle rich in purpose and meaning. And last part of old age. Old age means, I'm sorry. Okay, so sorry. Old age is the stage where people often look back and reflect, seeking closure and acceptance. Death is no longer just a possibility, it becomes physically near. The body slows, mental sharpness may decline, and many peers have already passed. The final station of life is in sight, and this brings death anxiety to the foreground. This stage invites people to think more deeply about life and death. A sense of life review arises, sometimes leading to withdrawal, but sometimes sparking a desire to live with more meaning. And what elderly individuals need most at this stage is hope. Hope for the life to come, and confidence that their earthly life left behind something meaningful. Also, as the Quran says, say, O Prophet, that Allah says, O my servant who have exceeded the limits against their souls, don't lose hope in Allah's mercy. For Allah certainly forgives all sin. He is indeed the all-forgiving, most merciful. Surah Zumar. And family members, especially younger generations, play a vital role in helping the elderly feel they are not alone. Spiritual care also becomes a powerful source of support in hospitals, care homes, or among isolated elders. That anxiety often coexists with loneliness, and both can be elevated with compassionate presence and meaningful connection. For some elders, that anxiety leads to increased devotion, seeking forgiveness, or drawing nearer to God. This inner transformation may come through a pilgrimage or an act of reconciliation or simply a morning prayer, maybe. Sometimes in the autumn of life, a person may experience a spiritual spring. So, although old age brings us close to death, it can also be time when the deepest spiritual connections and strong hopes are born. Can we coping with these anxieties or meaning-making structures? God image and spiritual coping, a soul-level relationship with that anxiety. How? Our relationship with that is not only mental or emotional, it is also profoundly spiritual. That forces us to confront our limits, our fragility, and our yearning for eternity. At this point, one's image of God and style of religious coping play a vital role in how that anxiety is processed. Religious psychology research. I'm so sorry. No. Okay. Religious psychology, our major research constantly shows that people's images of God influences how they related to that. How? Those with a loving, forgiving, and close image of God perceive that as less threatening. In contrast, a punitive, distant, or angry image of God may intensify that anxiety. At the same time, the Quran portrays even prophets feeling fear in the face of that. Consider the prayer of Prophet Moses. Moses appealed, "My Lord, I have indeed killed a man from them, so I fear they may kill me." Surah Qasas, maybe you know. So fear is a deeply human emotion. What matters is where we direct that fear. When believers turn their fear toward God, it becomes a source of nearness rather than distance. Spiritual coping strategies, maybe prayer, worship, reading scripture, or contemplating mortality, can transform that anxiety from a destructive force into a meaningful one. For some, this process results in a crisis of meaning. For others, it leads to the discovery of new meaning. In this way, that can become not only an ending, but a threshold, the spiritual rebirth. Therefore, coping with that anxiety is also a process of reconfiguration of one's relationship with God and inner spiritual accounting. Finally, we can say that facing that is deepening life. Today, we have taken a journey through the stages of life and explored how that anxiety accompanies us throughout. From the need for security in infancy to love in childhood, questioning in youth, meaning-making in adulthood, and hope in old age. This journey is not only about that, actually, but about how we related to life itself. We fear that because we love life. We fear that because we love life. But facing that invites us to live more fully, to love more deeply, to forgive and be forgiven, and ultimately to find that everything holds meaning. In my own research and observations, I have seen that what people most fear is not death itself, but having not truly lived. That is why building a healthy relationship with death also requires building a deeper, more authentic relationship with life. Faith becomes a powerful resource in this process. A love-centered image of God allows that to be seen not as a final separation, but as a return, a reunion, a transformation. That anxiety can bring us closer to Allah, to others, and to ourselves. If we learn not to suppress it, but to listen to it. Let me close with a verse from Quran. Allah says, "الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور." It means He is the one who created death and life in order to test which of you in best in deeds. And He is the Almighty, all-forgiving. Surah Mulk. In this divine balance of life and death, our journey toward meaning continues. And so sorry. Okay. We can say for epilogue that awareness, mental health, and the path to meaning. I came to London before that, and yesterday I had the chance to walk along the COVID-19 memorial wall by the River Thames. Thousands of red hearts painted by hand, and I was surprised actually. Each one of representing lives lost, a name remembered, a law mourned. Standing there, I was deeply moved by how grief becomes visible, collective, and yet so personal. It reminds me that anxiety is not just an individual concern. It is a human condition that binds us together. I want to show you the photograph, but I couldn't find it. Maybe you know there, the COVID-19 memorial wall, maybe seen before. Actually, during the COVID-19 pandemic, I was living in conduction research in the United States at that time. I was focused on academic work and didn't fully realize how deeply the experience was affecting me. But it wasn't until I returned to Turkey that I began to feel the emotional weight, especially the fear of losing my loved ones, my father especially. Like many of us, I had to face that anxiety not just as a researcher, but as a human being navigating uncertainty, grief, and the longing for safety. This moment helped me transition emotionally into the final part of my talk. How that awareness can deepen our mental health, our relationships, and our search for meaning. As we reflect on that anxiety, it is impossible not to acknowledge the global realities we are witnessing. Like many of you, I have been deeply affected by the images and stories coming from Palestine. Families shattered, children buried, lives erased in silence. Beyond the grief, there is a particular kind of anxiety we feel when we witness systemic unjust death. It is not only fear, it is a sense of helplessness, moral pain, and sometimes survivor's guilt. In existential terms, this is a collective confrontation with mortality, injustice, and the fragility of human dignity. And One way we can cope is by refusing to look away, bearing witness, telling stories, honoring the dead through remembrance and ethical action. These are spiritual responses that help transform paralyzing fear into meaningful solidarity. In such moment, we are reminded that these anxieties not just about our own finitude, but about how we value life, every life. In many spiritual and psychological traditions, contemplating death is not a morbid act, but rather a transformative one. The Prophet Muhammad advised, frequently remember the destroyer of pleasure, death. What means this? Far from being a call to despair, this is a call to wakefulness, a reminder to prioritize what truly matters, to live with greater compassion, presence, and purpose. In the field of existential psychotherapy, Irvin Yalom similarly argues that awareness can serve as a powerful catalyst for psychological healing. When we avoid thinking about that, we may also avoid thinking about the deeper question of our existence. What questions? Why am I here? And what gives my life meaning? And whom do I love? And what do I fear? Yalom suggests that confronting that anxiety can free us from trivial concerns and push us toward authentic living. He writes, though the physicality of death destroys us, the idea of death saves us. From a psychological perspective, that anxiety is not a pathology to be eliminated, but a signal to be understood. It is a mirror that reflects our deepest yearnings for connection, legacy, transcendence. Those who learn to face that gently, honestly, and spiritually often find a greater vitality for life, deeper relationships, and a renewed sense of meaning. In this sense, death is not the enemy of the mental health. It is a silent doorway to clarity, intention, and emotional depth. I will try to extend my heartfelt thanks to Yunus Emre Enstitüsü for organizing this meaningful event and for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts with such a diverse and thoughtful audience. And I hope this talk has been a gentle companion in your own inner journey. Thank you all. And if you would like to explore this topic further or follow my academic work, I would be very happy to stay connected with you. You can find my publications, conference papers, and the ongoing project on the following platforms: academia and Google Scholar and some social media. My Instagram address is here. For updates on my research, student events, and mental spiritual health topics, please feel free to reach out, ask questions, or collaborate. It's always a pleasure to grow in knowledge and compassion together. Thank you again for your attention. Thank you. You're welcoming.
Okay, can you hear me well? To our dear listeners, thank you for coming joining us today. I welcome you all again. I hope this session will be beneficial for all of us. I am Berra Ergül Sezen, as I said before. I am a PhD student and a research assistant at Sivas Cumhuriyet University in Turkey, in my home country. I came to London back in July to undertake my internship at this respected institute, and today we'll be talking about a cause of that in family system according to Bowen family therapy. Okay, I gotta check it. As a system, family is a unit. Death as a biological event that marks the end of life is not merely an individual loss but also an existential process that affects the entire family system. Considering the fact that family is a dynamic and a living system, it is an inevitable reality that the individual problems will also impact the whole family. As a system, family is a unit that every member is connected to each other, especially in two aspects: developmental process and coping strategies. The family is one of the most influential factors in shaping a person's cognitive, social, psychological, personality, and religious development. It also plays a key role in how we deal with challenges in life. The way we react to problems, the way we express emotions, and cope with stress is often shaped by the emotional environment we grew up in. In many ways, our family lays the foundation for how we understand ourselves and the world around us. Like every other life event, any kind of loss in family may have long-term echoes. In practical life, grief and loss therapy approaches focus on the individual experience and individual treatment. But one must not forget that every individual's reaction to loss actually emerges from the intergenerational relationship patterns. That's why I chose to study Bowen in this process, because Bowen was one of the first therapists that emphasized the role of the family. According to him, understanding why families' reactions to death differ from one another will make us comprehend the individual's reactions more accurately. Okay. I want to start by asking what exactly grief is. We define grief as all the reactions people show to the loss of someone they love. What we know about this process is it is shaped by personal factors like age, gender, emotional intelligence, personality traits. But we say it is not a merely experience, so we can say that social environment shapes how we deal with grief. Bowen described that as the greatest of all taboos, emphasizing that when families avoid openly talking about it, unresolved emotions can repeat. From this perspective, grief is a family process that requires open communication. In this session, we will be answering these three questions. What kind of impact the loss of a member can have in family system? Why are some families able to function after a traumatic loss while others struggle to recover from it for years or even generations? And how should we approach to a grieving family, and what can the individual do in this grieving process? But to answer these questions, we first have to talk about Bowen family therapy. It is a therapeutic approach that focuses on the emotional patterns within family relationships. Developed by psychiatrist Murray Bowen, this model asserts that family members are emotionally interconnected and that individuals can only be fully understood within the context of their family unit. Moreover, at least 3 generations of the family needs to be assessed to fully understand the family system. At its core, family system theory suggests that, just like physical illnesses that pass down through genetics, psychological states, emotional patterns, and behaviors can also be passed through generations. This is called the multi-generational transmission process. In this process, parents often pass their own emotional struggles or traumas onto their children, sometimes without even realizing it. As a result, a person might feel anxious, triggered, or fearful about a problem they've never directly experienced. Now let's see how this process works. Families develop emotional patterns in the way they respond to loss, and these patterns tend to repeat unless they are consciously recognized. For instance, if past generations coped with grief by suppressing their emotions or avoiding the topic altogether, younger generations or the members of the family may unknowingly adopt the same strategies because they don't know any better than this. they only see this. This transmission is not always verbal. It can happen through silence, emotional cutoff, or emotional distance, or unspoken rules like, we don't talk about that, we don't cry out about that. Over time, this can lead to unresolved grief being passed down, creating anxiety, emotional confusion, or even physical symptoms in later generations. Bowen therapy focuses on recognizing these reflective dynamics and aims to strengthen the emotional connections between family members. And the first question we got to answer is, what kind of impact the loss of a member can have in family system? To answer this question, first we need to explain what Bowen meant by the term emotional shockwave. This concept was observed by Bowen in the late 50s during his multi-generational family research. An emotional shockwave refers to the series of major events that occur in the family and in the members of the family after a significant loss. While these events might initially seem like coincidences, the research has shown that they happen nearly in every family in one way or another. Besides, studies have revealed that the symptoms of the shockwave can appear in various forms. This may include seemingly unrelated issues like phobias, frequent colds, depressions, alcohol addiction, miscarriages, an increase in accidents, or even serious behavioral problems. In other words, emotional shockwaves can lead to significant social and emotional dysfunctions in the family. According to Bowen, the death of a key family member can destabilize the emotional balance of the system. It may trigger anxiety both obvious or hidden ways, especially in families with low levels of differentiation. We're going to talk about this term later. In these families, members are emotionally fused, meaning that they may struggle to manage grief in healthy ways. What does it mean, emotionally fused families? In these families, members are overly emotionally connected to the point where personal boundaries are blurred. In such families, individuals often have difficulty separating their own thoughts and feelings from those of others. As a result, people may feel responsible for each other's emotions or feel guilty for having different needs or opinions. This emotional overconnection can make it hard to cope with stress, change, or loss because in this case, reactions become more intense and collective rather than balanced and individual. According to Bowen, this lack of emotional, okay. According to Bowen, this lack of emotional separation prevents healthy problem solving and makes the family system more vulnerable to anxiety and dysfunction. Instead of openly expressing their family's pain, some family members may suppress their emotions, while others become overly reactive. Unresolved grief can be passed down to the next generation, creating a legacy of fear, guilt, or confusion around loss. And okay, this was the second question part. Okay, you've seen this first. Why are some families able to function after a traumatic loss while others struggle to recover from it for years or even generation is the second question we will be answering. How long it takes for a family to regain emotional balance after a traumatic loss or any kind of loss depends on the family's level of emotional connectedness and the intensity of the death. In other words, we can say that who was lost and the type of loss experienced. It depends on these two. For instance, the impact will be deeper if the deceased held a central role in the family, such as main financial provider or the main source of joy or motivation. Similarly, the nature of the loss matters greatly, whether it happens suddenly or unexpectedly or as a result of violence or trauma. These factors shape not only how intense the grief is, but also how the family system reorganizes itself in the aftermath. Because after a traumatic event in the family, the roles, the power balance, and the relationships are all reconsidered. A well-integrated family may show strong and clear emotions at first, but can adopt to change more quickly over time. On the other hand, families with weaker emotional bonds might show little reactions at the time of loss, often keeping emotions inside, but later develop signs such as physical or emotional illness. With these two questions, we stated a problem. Now we know in this process, open communication is a key. But this time we will be asking how to approach as an outsider, as a therapist, and an individual who is grieving. First of all, how should we engage with a grieving family? Bowen points out that during events like funerals or burials, religious people often focus on attributing the loss to the faith, God, or religious concepts. Generally, they give religious advices or just pray after the death. They tend to overlook the deep emotional process that the family is going through. What really needs to be done is to support the family without falling into denial, without activating defense mechanisms, and show respect for the family's unique grieving experience. One must not tell what to do or what not to do to a grieving family. Bowen makes an interesting suggestion at this point. When speaking with people who have experienced a loss, we should pay close attention to the words we use. Direct terms like death, dying, funerals, or burials should be used carefully, while indirect expressions such as passed away, lost, left this world, or became an angel should be avoided. The reason is simple. Using direct words shows the person speaking is comfortable with the topic, which in turn helps others feel more at ease as well. Also, indirect terms might seem to soften the reality of that. They actually encourage the family to respond in indirect ways too. In contrast, using direct language can help open a closed emotional system and allow the family to feel more comfortable within themselves. Bowen believed that few things are as powerful as that when it comes to breaking emotional bonds. Funeral rituals are old as humanity itself, and they serve to bring the living together while helping them to say goodbye to deceased and move forward with life. Refusing to leave the body, keeping children away from the funerals, or leaving all the funeral arrangements to hospitals can prevent people from fully grasping the reality of that. This often leads to distorted beliefs about what that means. Bowen emphasized that children are not harmed by seeing that itself, by the anxious and fearful reactions by the adults around them. Again. As for the therapeutic approaches, according to Bowen family therapy, it is important for a therapist to maintain a differentiated position. The counselor helps the family to go through a process of self-questioning and supports them in solving their own problems while remaining emotionally neutral. In this process, the therapist may use several techniques like genograms, questioning technique, and the eye position. Genogram is a tool used to visualize how emotional connections and patterns within a family are transmitted across generations. Using geometric shapes, lines, or other symbols, a genogram maps out at least 3 generations of a family. By identifying recurring themes within family relationships, it helps uncover the roots of current problems. You can see here, this is a genogram. We have the gender, the names, the death of the born year, and the relationships. It means they are married and their children, and these are all the emotional patterns with symbols. The next one is questions. To understand what is happening in their relationships, the therapist uses the questioning technique. This approach allows individuals to recognize their own emotions as well as what they evoke in others. These questions might be like, how did you feel about the death in your family? What behavior during the grieving process do you regret the most? How has this loss affected you and your decisions? What would you like to change in your family during this grieving process, etc.? And for the last one, when one person in the family is angry or unhappy, other family members may adopt that emotional state. Counselors encourage individuals to work toward differentiation, helping them become aware of their own perspectives and emotional states. This is called I position in Bowen therapy. And for the last one, what one can do as a grieving person. Bowen explains that the concept of differentiation, that a person can stay emotionally connected to their family while also keeping their sense of self. It refers to a person's ability to stay with others while still being able to think, feel, or decide independently. According to Bowen, how an individual deals with grief depends largely on their level of differentiation. After a loss, this means being able to feel the pain, acknowledge the sadness, or even share it with others without becoming overwhelmed or emotionally cut off. Instead of avoiding grief or taking on everyone else's emotions, the differentiated individual finds a healthy balance. They mourn, but they also stay grounded. In this way, they help restore emotional stability not only for themselves, but also for the broader family system. And for the conclusion, Bowen noted that even among people with the most complex problems, one of their deepest desires was simply to be listened without judgment. In his observations, most people die alone, trapped with thoughts they are unable to share with anyone. When emotionally intense events in a family are ignored, this can trigger deeper problems later on. Suppressed emotions don't disappear, they eventually surface, often in unhealthy ways. That's why healthy and open communication within the family are key to breaking the cycle of multi-generational transmission. A person who can recognize which emotions or traumas don't belong to them, manage their own reactions consciously, can finally put an end to the echoes that keep repeating across generations. And finally, we can say this: true healing begins when we stop silently inheriting pain and boldly choose to end the cycle. I hope this presentation has provided valuable insights into multi-generational transmission of grief. Once again, thank you for your interest and time. I'm open to your comments and questions. Thank you. Okay, I don't know what to do next.
Any questions?
So we explained everything so well, you don't have any question? You're grieving.
I'll ask one. So in one of the slides you listed out different factors, if I can use that term, impacting grief, and one of them was gender. Mm-hmm. So in your research, how have you found the gender response to grief changing over the generations and over the years, especially especially in Eastern culture, mm-hmm. men grieving, showing emotions is frowned upon, or they're told don't cry and things, mm-hmm, whereas mm-hmm. women are allowed to show those emotions. So